The 12th station, Jesus dies on the cross. We read in the Gospel of Luke, "It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon, while the sun's light failed. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying out in a loud voice, said, 'Father, into your hands I commend my spirit.' Having said this, he breathed his last." The Gospel of the Lord. It was a busy afternoon around town. The weather was warm. People were out doing what needed to be done. What they didn't know was, at that very hour, someone was dying. I knew that someone was near death. It was my mother. She was dying. The hospice nurse had been to the house. Dad asked me to go and pick up something at the pharmacy. As I drove, I tried to pay attention to the road, but in my mind, all I could think of was this: she's dying. At the pharmacy, I saw a man on his phone speaking rudely to somebody. The clerk stocking toothpaste on the shelf. The woman fussing because her prescription wasn't ready. And I looked at these ordinary people doing ordinary things, and every fiber of my being wanted to shout and say to them, "Don't you know what's happening? Don't you know what's important? Don't you know who's dying?" But they didn't know. The Gospels tell us that it was a busy afternoon around town on that day which we call Good Friday. People were out doing what needed to be done. Jerusalem was full of pilgrims who had come up for Passover. And apparently, many of them did not know that at that very hour, someone was dying. The Galilean rabbi named Jesus, the one who had created a stir with his miracles and his message, he had been arrested. Pilate sentenced him to be crucified. To humiliate Jesus, they stripped off his clothes. They drove nails through his flesh. His head bled from the thorns. The soldiers were bored. The pilgrims kept coming and going. Some of the religious leaders took time from their prayers to come and spit at Jesus. Meanwhile, Barabbas was free somewhere. It was just another busy Friday in Jerusalem. But John's Gospel tells us that the mother of Jesus was standing near his cross. And I wonder if she noticed all these people coming and going, and did she want to shout with every fiber of her being, "Don't you know what's happening? Don't you know what's important? Don't you know who's dying?" 2,000 years later, as we contemplate the 12th station of the cross, we remember who died on that hill outside the walls of Jerusalem. It's rather strange. On the original Good Friday, almost no one in the world knew that a man named Jesus had died in Jerusalem. So few knew or noticed. But we remember that on that cross, someone died. When I was a boy, Good Friday was a holiday, but it wasn't fun. Schools were closed, stores were closed. We were not allowed to play no TV, no music. We were supposed to remember that Jesus had died on the cross. We spent a lot of time in church that day. That's when I was a boy. Nowadays, Good Friday is ignored by the majority of Americans. They stay busy with ordinary things: shopping, eating, texting, lying, cheating, hating. And I want to scream on Good Friday, don't you know what's happening? Don't you know what's important? Don't you know who died this day? The Romans humiliated Jesus, but Jesus reveals the humility of God. The most important death in human history, yet God died obscurely in a backwater province of the Roman Empire, and almost no one knew. But 2,000 years later, we still know. And how is it that this obscure death refused to remain obscure? Well, in my experience, there comes a point in every human life when all the things we do cease to be important. There comes a point when all the things we cling to for our certainty and security, they just can't sustain us or protect us anymore. There comes a point in every life when we have to start letting go. Like when the doctor tells us that the test results aren't good, or the one we love says to us, I don't love you anymore. Or when our plans don't pan out. In moments like this, we realize that there's nothing we can buy, nothing we can hold on to, which can help us. And sometimes it is the abyss of death that is right in front of us, and every fiber of our being screams, does anybody see what's happening? And it is then, just then, that we hear an answer from an obscure cross on an obscure hill outside of Jerusalem. Echoing down the centuries, the one whose head was crowned with thorns says to all those who feel hopeless, I see, I notice, I know, I'm here. When life takes everything away from us, that is when we understand how much we need Jesus. Jesus who had everything taken away from him. When death stares us in the face, that is when we understand how much we need the one who stared down death. God died on the cross, and almost no one noticed. But eventually we notice, we learn how much we need him. Does your love feel crucified? Do you know someone who struggles under the weight of a cross? Have things fallen apart, leaving you to shout into the darkness? Is anybody there? Does anybody care? Jesus knows, and Jesus notices. And he will ask you to know and notice your neighbor in their need. For now, we step back from our daily distractions and we let the truth sink in. Every fiber of our being shouts, look at the one who died on the cross. That's where we find life. That's where we find forgiveness. That's where we find strength. Nowhere else. Just a hill and a cross and our God.